and I have no idea what it is. It's been there stationary for about the last 35 minutes. It's about 5:30 on Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. I have no idea what this thing is. I hope it's in focus. I'm shooting at it with about a 500 millimeter lens with a 2x teleconverter on it. So this is at about 1,000 millimeters right now. And for those of you who think this might just be the moon, it is not the moon. The moon is off to my right. I can see it. This is significantly smaller than the moon. All right. Again, for those of you who might think this thing is the moon, there's the thing. And whoa, there's the moon. It's not the moon.
So that is the video from a guy in Billings, Montana. Evidently, he took that video yesterday. And let me stop this a minute. I got a guitar player on the thing, but let me bring you what is happening actually on the DEF CON site. We want to try to bring you all this information that the DEF CON level, according to the DEF CON level site, has been raised to a 2. So the current DEF CON level right now in the United States of America is at a 2. That is one step away from a nuclear war. We'll go over that in a second, but this is the information coming in on the DEF CON warning site. I want to read you this. It said, U.S. tracking high altitude surveillance balloon, Department of Defense, an intelligence gathering balloon, most certainly launched by the People's Republic of China, is currently floating above the United States. The Department of Defense announced on Thursday evening, that is tonight. The United States government has detected and is tracking a high-altitude surveillance balloon that is over the continental United States right now. Pentagon Press Secretary, Air Force Brigadier General Pat Ryder said during an impromptu briefing Thursday evening. The U.S. government, including NORAD, continues to track and monitor it closely. Ryder said that the balloon is well above all commercial traffic and doesn't pose a threat to civilian aviation. He also said this isn't the first time such a balloon has been seen over the United States. After the balloon was detected, Ryder said the U.S. government acted immediately to protect against the collection of sensitive information, though he did not give details of what measures were taken. A senior defense official who participated in the briefing on the background only said the U.S. intelligence community has very high confidence that the balloon belongs to the People's Republic of China and that the United States has engaged with Chinese officials with urgency through multiple channels regarding the presence of the balloon. We have communicated to them the seriousness with which we take this issue. The official said, we have made clear that we will do whatever is necessary to protect our people and our homeland. Right now, the official said, following recommendations of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Navy, Army General Mark Milley, and Air Force General Glenn D. Van Herk, commander of the U.S. Northern Command and the North American Aerospace Defense Command, the U.S. position is to allow the balloon to continue to float above the United States rather than attempt to shoot it down. The official said the risk of using kinetic force to take the balloon out of the sky might put civilian communities at risk, and that the threat of the balloon poses now to both safety and the U.S. intelligence doesn't justify such an action. Currently, we assess this balloon has limited additive value from an intelligence collective perspective, the official said, but we are taking steps nevertheless to protect against foreign intelligence collection of sensitive information. The official said this is not the first time such a balloon has been seen above the United States, but did not say this time the balloon appears to be acting differently than what it has seen in the past. It's happened a handful of other times over the past few years, to include before this administration, the official said. This appears to be hanging out for longer periods of time, this time around more persistent than in previous instances, and this would be a distinguishing factor. While the senior defense official would not say how large the balloon is, the official did say its size did figure into the calculation to not use kinetic force to take it out of the sky. We did assess that it was large enough to cause damage from the debris field if we downed it over an area. The official said, I can't really go into the dimension, but there have been reports of pilots seeing this thing, even though it is pretty high up in the sky. So it is very, very sizable. So according to the latest information that we have, that this balloon right now is in Billings, Montana. They have located it. They're tracking it. Right now, they have not taken any action on this balloon. But you know, it must be a pretty good sized balloon, folks, according to the Pentagon. And if you had listened to the NBC interview, they said General Mark Miley convened a emergency session to discuss what to do, and F-22 fighter jets were dispatched. So they said if it does go over a U.S. military base, or it goes close to a sensitive installation, that they could go ahead and shoot this Chinese spy balloon out of the sky. You know, and that would be something, folks. So I want to take you to the DEFCON level site, what you're looking at. So the overall is 3, but it doesn't make sense, folks. So what you're looking at, this is the DEFCON warning level site. I will leave all of these links in the description box, but I'm going to go through the different countries right here. I want to go through the different countries. And Africa right now is at a 2. The country of Africa is right now at a 2. The Middle East with Israel and Iran is at a DEFCON 2. The Cyber Command of the United States, the Cyber Command of the United States is at a DEFCON 2. Europe right now is at a DEFCON 2. This is Europe. Asia, the military theater of Asia right now is at a DEFCON 2. The United States of America, for the first time, folks, for the first time in a long time, this is the Northern Command. Northern Command is, according to this website, is at a DEFCON 2. So what does this mean? This means that this is one step away to a nuclear war. Now, the Pentagon and our U.S. military is not going to tell us what is actually going on, folks. But we've been talking about this for a very long time, that China is going to try to take the country of Taiwan and either set up a blockade or attack Taiwan in the coming future. We don't know if it's about to happen, or 3 months from now, 6 months from now. Folks, we have no idea. This is breaking news, and evidently it has upset the leaders in our Pentagon, our Joint Chiefs of Staff. So they are watching this very closely. They have protested at the Chinese American embassy. They have let China know that we do not approve of them sending a spy craft over our country to surveil our military bases and our military movements. So something is definitely up. They would not be doing this if there was not some kind of imminent attack in the near future. I don't have any more information, but folks, this is very serious. We all know right now that Russia is about to launch their second invasion of Ukraine. Many reports are coming in that they're going to be launching from the Belarus area and the Kherson area up to 200,000 to 300,000 new Russian troops. A lot of people have said that they're going to be doing this on the anniversary of the first invasion on February 24th, but no one really knows. Vladimir Putin has actually made a speech today stating that we will not lose this war, folks. Vladimir Putin has made a speech saying we will not lose the war. And let me go to this article right now, and we're going to come back to the DEFCON level in just a minute. But I want to read you this short article of what Vladimir Putin said today when he was laying a wreath in Stalingrad. So what you're looking at, this is War News 24/7. Vladimir Putin prefaces a new declaration of war, a new patriotic war. German tanks and fascism are again at our borders. We are threatened by the last descendants of Adolf Hitler. And he doesn't look too happy in this picture, folks. He said the most serious indication that Russia is moving rapidly toward the declaration of a new patriotic war, with all that this entails, was given by Vladimir Putin on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Stalingrad. We are threatened again by fascism, and the Germans said that those who are on the battlefield obviously don't understand that modern war with Russia will be completely different for them. But we have a way to respond, and it won't just end with the use of armored vehicles. Everyone must understand this, added Vladimir Putin. This is obvious, as the Moscow Times newspaper points out, referencing to Russia's massive nuclear arsenal. The Russian president first laid flowers at the eternal flame of the Mayunkurin, the hillside where much of the fighting took place during the Second World War, and which today houses the Battle of Stalingrad Museum Complex and the city's famous Motherland Call statue. Fascism and German tanks are again at our border, said President Vladimir Putin. They should prepare themselves for the consequences, he said, and meaningfully added, now, unfortunately, we will see that the ideology of Nazism, already in its modern form, in its modern manifestation, again, is creating direct threats to the security of our country. Tanks and fascism are once again at our borders. We are once again forced to fend off the aggression of the collective West. Neo-Nazi ideology has reemerged while Russia withstands Western aggression. Once again, he is threatened by German tanks. Leopards with crosses are sent to fight Russia in the Ukrainian land by the last descendants of Adolf Hitler, the Banderites, those who drag Germany into a new war and expect to win on the battlefield, do not understand that a modern war with Russia will be very different. We are not sending our tanks to the borders, but we have something to answer for, and it's not going to end with the use of armored vehicles. Everyone needs to understand that. So I'm going to play this short video of President Vladimir Putin and his fiery speech today, and I hope you can see that, but I must mute my mic first.
Сейчас, к сожалению, мы видим, что идеология нацизма уже в своем современном обличье, в современном проявлении вновь создает прямые угрозы безопасности нашей страны. Мы вновь и вновь вынуждены давать отпор агрессии коллективного Запада. Невероятно, но факт. Нам снова угрожают немецкими танками «Леопард», на борту которых кресты. И вновь собираются воевать с Россией на земле Украины руками последующих Гитлера, руками бандеровцев. Мы знаем, что, несмотря на усилия официальные, продажные по своей сути пропаганды недружественных нам западных элит, у нас много друзей, причем во всем мире, в том числе и на американском континенте, в Северной Америке, в Европе. Но те, кто втягивает европейские страны, в том числе и Германию, в новую войну с Россией, и тем более безответственно заявляет об этом как уже о свершившемся факте, те, кто рассчитывает одержать над Россией победу на поле боя, видимо, не понимают, что современная война с Россией будет для них совсем другой. Мы свои танки к их границам не посылаем, но у нас есть чем ответить. И применением бронетехники дело не закончится. Все должны это понимать. Для тех, кто угрожает нам, видимо, для них непонятна простая истина. Весь наш народ, все мы росли и с молоком матери впитали в себя традиции нашего народа. Поколение победителей, преемственность поколений, ценностей, традиций. Все это то, что отличает Россию, делает нас сильными.
So this was the speech that Vladimir Putin has just made today on the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Stalingrad, where German forces were defeated and over 1 million Russians lost their lives fighting Adolf Hitler during that battle. The Battle of Stalingrad, July 17th, 1942 to February the 2nd, 1943, was one of the largest during World War II. It unfolded over an area of about 100 square kilometers, and more than 2.1 million people took part in the fighting at different stages on both sides. The defeat of the German troops operating in Stalingrad radically changed the course of the battles and became a harbinger of the victory of the Soviet army over the Nazis. We will destroy Western weapons. Earlier, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned that the longer the range of Western weapons in Ukraine, the more Moscow will repel this threat from its territories. Now we aim to defeat the Ukrainian artillery so that it does not pose a threat to our territories. And the greater the range of the weapons provided to Kiev regime, the more we will have to remove them from the territories that are part of our country. Responding to a question about the scenario for which Russia had to prepare, Lavrov said that Moscow is acting on the basis of objective realities. First of all, from the realities enshrined in our legislation, that is our Constitution, 4 new territories, 2 people's republics, and 2 regions join Russia following the results of the referendums. There can be no question here, as I see it, he pointed out. The West remains restless and sinking more and more into a quagmire, and this factor plays a decisive role in the course of the special operation, in my view, he observed. The escalation of the conflict is an avalanche, he pointed out. It all started with the delivery of some helmets for Ukraine military, then small arms followed, and now they are openly talking about aircraft. And he's talking about the F-16 fighter jets that Zelensky has just put out, information on. He said German Chancellor Olaf Scholz swears this will never happen, but he's also known for his ability to change his stance quite quickly. Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, noted, besides, he's far from alone here. Thus, he has declared that NATO would never go to war against Russia, while Foreign Minister Anelia Baerbock admitted it. She said, we are already fighting against Russia, and we are doing it in a coordinated way, the Russian foreign minister has stressed. So, folks, this is the latest news that we have. It does look like some people have been saying that President Vladimir Putin could declare a new patriotic war against NATO and the West at any time We are expecting a large second invasion from Russian troops in the coming days and weeks. This could be any time, folks. There is at least 200,000 Russian soldiers amassed on the Belarusian border and different areas in Ukraine, ready for this second invasion. Now we have Chinese spy balloons flying over the United States right now, and it doesn't look very good, folks. Something big is about to happen in our country right now. Like I said, we are at DEFCON 2, according to this new this website here, the DEFCON warning system. The United States of America is at DEFCON 2. That is one step away from a launching nuclear weapons. This is probably the second time in the history of our country that we have been at DEFCON 2. The first time was during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it does look like that we are in another crisis right now. And I can go through all the levels, folks, all of the levels right now. In Africa, Africa is at a DEFCON 2. The Middle East is at a DEFCON 2. Cyber warfare units are at DEFCON 2. Europe is at DEFCON 2. Asia right now is at DEFCON 2. And the United States of America right now is at a DEFCON 2. That is 100%, folks, 100%. All of these different countries are reporting a DEFCON 2 level. So we need to get ready. We need to get ready because things are changing rapidly in our world right now. And folks, you know, it doesn't take a nuclear scientist to figure out that we're in trouble. You know, we basically are provoking this war with Russia. You know, I don't think it's going to end very good for our country. I really don't. And folks, if China gets involved, and China attacks Taiwan, China knows that they're going to have to take out U.S. bases and U.S. aircraft carriers before they invade Taiwan, folks. They know that they're going to have to attack Japan. They know that they're going to have to take out probably our military base in Guam and other assets, maybe even in Hawaii. So, folks, when this thing explodes, when this stick of dynamite explodes upon the world, then I think our country is going to be affected. And I don't think we're going to get away without our country being hit by either the Chinese, the Russians, Iranians, or North Koreans, folks. We're going to take casualties, and we're probably going to take a lot of them. So this is our latest broadcast. We have 1,045 people watching. We're going to try to stay on this story. But before we go, I want to ask you a question, folks. Are you ready? You know, I ask this question on every video. Are you ready? In case something happens, in case the worst case scenario happens, are you ready to meet Jesus Christ? Do you know 100% that if you died today, you would go to heaven? Well, folks, I'm going to lead you in a prayer. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. Folks, things are accelerating. We are living in the book of Revelation right now. Revelation chapter 6. The four horses of the apocalypse are riding right now, folks. They're riding. And if you read a few chapters down in Revelation chapter 6, it describes a nuclear war. It describes a nuclear bomb going off in the world. So I'm going to ask you once again, do you want to get born again? Do you want to have the assurance that if you died tonight, you would go to heaven? If you say yes, well, pray this prayer and Jesus Christ will save your soul and forgive your sins right now. Just say, Dear Jesus, I know that I'm a sinner, Lord, and I ask you right now to forgive me of all of my sins and wash them away with your precious blood. I do believe that you are the Son of God, and I do believe that you died on the cross and that you shed your blood for me and that you rose again on the third day. Thank you, Jesus, for saving my soul. Thank you, Jesus, for forgiving all of my sins. And thank you, Jesus, for giving me eternal life. Now, if you said that prayer, folks, you are saved and you are born again. No one can take you out of God's hands. In Romans 10:9, it says that if you shall confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus Christ and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. For with your heart man believes unto righteousness, and with your mouth confession is made unto salvation. Folks, we're here. We are here right now on February the 2nd, 2023. You know, we are here. We're living the book of Revelation. You are the chosen generation. You're going to see all of these things come to pass, folks. And I'm sorry to tell you, I have more bad news. I have more bad news. This is not the worst of it. Folks, the worst of it is going to be when the pole shift happens. And I'm going to do a special report tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm doing a special report on Planet X, Nibiru, the 3 days of darkness, what is going to happen, the preparations you need to make. This is coming, folks. We are right here. All of the prophecies in the Bible are coming to pass, and I'm going to give you the scriptural references on the 3 days of darkness and what it entails for the entire earth, folks. We're about to go through a pole shift on this earth. And you need to be ready. So God bless you. Please share our videos out. Get your life straight, folks. Listen, I cannot stress enough. You need to get your life straight with Jesus Christ. No one knows the day or hour when he's coming back. No one knows that day or hour, but he is coming back for us. And you need to make sure that your life is reflecting what your faith is. You know, we need to love each other. We need to forgive each other. We need to help each other out. We need to do good to others as Jesus told us, folks. Jesus gave us 2 commandments. He said, love thy Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself, folks. Forgive others. Have love in your heart instead of hate. And be ready that when you stand before Jesus Christ, he will welcome you into the kingdom of God and not tell you, depart from me, you that work iniquity. So God bless you. Please share this important video out. Times are growing short. Stay tuned tomorrow for our special report on the 3 days of darkness and other things that are about to hit our earth. So God bless you. We're going to let you go tonight. Just remember, Jesus Christ loves you. He's coming back soon. Don't be caught dead without him. Bye-bye.
What this means is that if NATO is escalating the conflict and Ukraine is winning, Russia gets pushed back to the pre-2014 order and all the rest. It almost absolutely guarantee it has to go nuclear, because this would likely be a catalyst towards Russia's political instability. Putin cannot lose this conflict. There is so much. Most people don't understand that while it might seem that it's just a small piece of land, and why would anybody care? Of course, it's not a small piece of land of resources. It's a large population of people. And when you add on the Ukrainian landmass and all those resources, powerhouse, so does absolutely nothing. And by some stroke of luck, Ukraine wins. Maybe the Russians start fighting with one another. Okay, maybe there's some sort of conflict between the Wagner group and the Chechens and the Russian Federation. If that happens, we're likely to, at least, in the very least, see a nuclear incident, some demonstration, a demonstrative nuclear strike or test possibly. It doesn't matter. We will likely see that card played as a means of trying to bring control to the situation. That will, of course, draw a nation, which will almost force NATO, who has up till that point done nothing, even though we already know they're in there like a dirty shirt already. So this category is almost moot at this point, but we put it in there just so we have all the possible outcomes. Then, of course, it inevitably leads to World War III going nuclear. If NATO is escalating and Russia is winning, you heard what Jake Berry just said. He believes that World War III comes about if Russia is winning. And if the Russians are able to get a hold of at least eastern Ukraine, for some reason, he believes that the war is well over into Poland. Now, this is the only where they may not be nuclear, because we would hope that Russia would stop there, even though a lot of people are saying at this point in time, trust between the East and West is completely broken. The Russians will never trust the West again. Therefore, they're not only going to just take Eastern Ukraine, they're going to have to take the whole country, and then they're going to have to take the Baltic states as well. It's inevitable. This will be the of NATO. Thereby, we go back to World War III and a nuclear age. Okay? Now, if NATO does nothing from this point forward, if they, renege on the tank promise and they don't do anything else to support the Ukrainian military effort, then basically Russia is going to take pretty much the entire country. They're likely to, concern is emboldened to go and attempt this in surrounding territories. And that, of course, is going to call into question the strength of the U.S. military and NATO alliance as a whole, thereby weakening the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency, because not only has NATO already shot itself in the foot by the seizure of Russian assets, and many other countries are starting to see that if we're holding all these dollars and someday we get put on the NATO can throw us under the bus as well. Well, you have US dollar collapse. US is not going to let that happen, because the house of fiat, there's trillions of dollars riding on it. Therefore, we go to World War III nuclear. So no matter how you slice it, we're really looking at a world war. There really is no possible way out of this scenario at point. And if you guys are seeing something that I'm not, if you can see a situation where perhaps there's some kind of stalemate and where perhaps Russia is allowed to keep hold of the 4 annexed territories, which is what it intends on taking back. If you can imagine a world where both the East and the West can coexist and we can still have US dollar hegemony, then please spell that out for me in the comment section below. I'm sure there's some possibility I'm missing, but on the face of it, if we're taking the media mouthpieces at their word, there really is no way out of this predicament but nuclear war. Because remember, as Jake Berry is saying, if Russia wins, okay, he's saying that if Russia wins, that's when it goes to World War III. Russia's saying, no, if we lose, that's when it's going to World War III. So, you know, there really is no way out of this predicament. All I can say is that the top NATO official is saying that the alliance is ready for direct confrontation with Russia. It's probably not the best picture to go along with this statement. And yeah, so they're making out as if they're ready for it, but a lot of people, including the RAND Corporation, don't believe that Ukraine nor NATO is prepared to fight the Russians. This is a video we released earlier today. It's a World War III nuclear survival kit. It's about 30 minutes long, and we go over a variety of different tools that you can use. Stockpile now while you can, because we can see where all this is going. And remember what Joe Biden said. So yeah, go check out that video. Videos like this, we put a lot of work into. They don't get a lot of views for some reason. I understand everybody wants the news, but it's important that you got the gear as well. Now, this is a statement by Joe Biden. Remember when he said this?
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with the idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews. Just understand, don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say. That's called World War III. Okay? The idea that.
Okay, so people will say, well, he said with American pilots. The only way you have F-16s and even tanks in there is if the Americans are involved in some capacity. Maintenance that's required. Every Abrams tanks has a maintenance regimen, which is rather intensive as far as I know, and you need a whole other service infrastructure built around it. So there's very likely going to have to be people from NATO countries in the cockpits of these vehicles, okay? Now, there is talk of transfer of aircraft and long-range missiles to Ukraine, and this, of course, will likely be the final red line that Russia is able to permit. Recall that analogy I talked about yesterday, whereby somebody comes on your property and they're making threats to you and your family, and you say, if you take one more step, I'm going to shoot you. Well, they take one more step, and then they start throwing stuff at your house. And you say, if you keep doing that, I'm going to shoot you. Then maybe they harm one of your pets. And you say, if you keep doing that, I'm going to shoot you. Because you haven't acted on it at all, on your threats, they're going to keep transgressing to your property until you actually check them. And the Russians have yet to check NATO at all. And it almost feels as though NATO at this point in time is looking for some sort of reaction. They're waiting for the Russians to act out and to react essentially to these provocations. So it's only a matter of time, and 100-mile range missiles to Ukraine could be exactly what does that, because that, according to some of the military experts, could be one of the things that actually gives Ukraine a fighting chance in this conflict, is long-range missiles that can target Russian artillery pieces. They say that if they don't have that, then it's going to be a very, very hard fight. So this is really the last hurdle to overcome. We've already seen instances where Ukraine has sent drones deep into Russian territory. Speaking of drones, yes, we're going to talk about the Iranian incident in just a minute. The war is spilling over into other countries, and as we enter this period of economic contraction, all of these conflicts, which were just simmering and festering under the surface, are now starting to become inflamed and it's just turning into a massive conflagration. So indeed, if and when I should say, Ukraine gets ATACMS and planes, because understand there are people within the government who believe that Russia is never going to act on any of these red lines, that it's all just, Russia's, the United States is calling Russia's bluff, essentially. And there's people who believe that, and that's playing with fire. What's more is that we have the U.S. General, a 4-star general, predicting that the country is going to be at war with China in 2025. That is only a year and change away. Well, around 2 years away, we'll say. Some people think that the invasion is going to come a lot sooner, talking about the invasion of Taiwan by the Chinese. So let me see if I can find a map here, just so we can see what's going on in the world, because there's so many conflicts brewing at the exact same time. We also have this situation with Iran. This is the global conflict tracker map. And Iran is one of the ones that's in the news cycle today because, of course, there's been some attacks on some of their facilities. And not only in Iran, but in Syria as well. There was I believe it was a convoy of 24 vehicles that was attacked. So, according to some sources, the Israelis were involved in this. According to others, it was the Americans. The Iranians are saying that it was likely something that came from within their own borders. So, the Wall Street Journal is saying that Israel played a hand in this. It's really hard to know exactly what is going on. Of course, Biden recently said that with no nuclear deal, the U.S. is eyeing other options in Iran. So we know that the Iranians and the Russian alliance is very strong because Russia is actually going to be sending Su-35s, which is some of their more advanced fighter craft, to Iran. And so we know that that alliance is strong based on, the Iranians sending those attack drones to Russia. According to Iran, the drones that were used to attack the defense facility were launched from within the territory. And this would make sense because apparently they were just like small quadricopter style drones that dropped some grenades. There's been some misinformation circulating with respect to conflating two separate instances. One, there was a fire in an oil refinery, I believe, and people were saying that that was the result of one of these bombs. There's a lot of mixed messages. Of course, no country wants to admit that it was successfully attacked. So, of course, Iran is saying that everything was successfully shot down. Of course, we have to take that with a heaping bag of salt. We can never trust exactly what's coming out. That's the same thing the Russians say. That's the same thing the Ukrainians say. And you can bet that if our facilities ever get attacked, which they have, we would likely say it was just an error, or we would downplay the threat. We would say, no, it wasn't a cyber attack. It was, something of our own fault, because we don't want to, number one, there's obviously economic motives for that if it's a private agency which was attacked, but also and insurance and security and things of that nature. But also, you don't want to spook your population, appear weak when you're strong, strong when you're weak, that sort of thing. So yeah, I suspect that the conflict between Israel and Iran is only going to intensify because Israel right now is facing a lot of domestic issues, and there's a lot of attacks within Israel by Palestinians and vice versa. So they're fighting a lot, and I'm sure they are chalking that up to collusion with outside forces, be it Hezbollah, Iran, and other countries and groups which might be funding or in some way, shape, or form supporting and encouraging these uprisings within Israel. So, a great way to take attention away from that would be a conflict with Iran. Now, the problem with the conflict is with Iran is they don't really know what Iran has. Okay, so some intelligence agencies and some of the people who I know who gather this type of intelligence are under the assumption that the Iranians may have nuclear weapons already, and this is precisely why Israel hasn't attacked them yet. Now, recall that Israel, everybody knows they have nukes. Of course, they don't admit to having nuclear weapons. And they would likely, in the case of a major all out conventional strike by Iran on the small, relatively small country of Israel, which could be completely annihilated by Iranian missiles, something they've been preparing for a long time, would likely have no choice but to use nuclear weapons. And the question would be, well, what would the response of the international community be at that point? And how do you get to that point? Well, Israel is planning on attacking Iran's nuclear facilities because, according to them anyways, they fear that a nuclear armed Iran is just automatically going to start lobbing nukes at Israel. I don't understand what sort of logic would be at work there. I know there's a lot of hawkish neoconservative people who believe that they have to do everything within their power to dethrone the theocracy that is the Iranian regime. But, you know, it seems to defy logic as to why they would do that. It seems more of a case of we want nukes so that we can't be bullied around. But what do I know? Anyways, the Israelis need these massive ordnance penetrators put on the F-35s or F-15X systems that, and the F-35s, of course, that they would be given by the United States. I believe they don't have these yet, but in order to get deep enough into the ground to get these nuclear facilities, they need this type of stuff. Apparently, they don't have it yet. So the question is, once, if and when they do get this and they do the attack on the Iranian nuclear facility, how is Iran going to respond, and how is Russia going to respond? Is refrain from support for Ukraine up until this point, although they seem to be fighting in proxy with the Iranians, because Israel-Russia relations, of course, there's that historical relationship that I'm not going to get into, but there's also this issue of, well, if the Iranians are helping the Russians take out the Ukrainians, then that's an alliance that Israel doesn't like, obviously, because now Russia is going to be giving weapons to the Iranians, like planes and things of that nature, and possibly even extending the nuclear umbrella over them, which is why maybe Israel hasn't attacked them at all yet. But it's really hard to say. Anyways, it's likely that that's going to get a conventional response. Iran will have no alternative but to respond to that level of Israeli aggression. Okay. Now, they've done things in the past, like attacked nuclear scientists, assassinated one of their top generals. They've done cyber attacks like Stuxnet, things of that nature, which of course backfired later on. But I think a direct conventional strike on their nuclear facilities, something that the US and Israel has been training for some time. The biggest exercises just have taken place in the last 2 weeks, in fact, which of course is why everybody's probably so hair-triggered and on such high alert in Iran right now with the activation of those air defense systems. That quite obvious that they were ready and anticipated something like this happening. There's a good chance that Iran is going to have to respond to this with a conventional strike on Israel. And once that happens, I mean, it's just a powder keg that's just going to go up, I think. I think at that point, everything just goes to hell. And that could be the black swan event that puts oil well over the $300 a barrel mark this year, because, of course, Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and they would close this strait here, where a lot of the oil from Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates traverses through. And of course, Iran, and so all that oil, 20% of the world's oil, is taken off the market. That leads to a tripling of the world's oil prices overnight, or in the very least, you can't get insurance for these ships, or the insurance goes up so much that thereby raises the price of oil, and everything just goes to hell. Okay, so this is I'm not sure if this is the video of, I think this is on the border of Syria and Iraq. This is happening. So there were some big drone strikes carried out. Syria really is the crossroads of Middle Eastern and European civilization. What else do we have to talk about today? I think we talked about most of this already. So the attack targeted a ballistic missile depot. This is one of the attacks that happened within Iran. According to Al Hadith TV channel, Israel is unrelated to the operation. So they're saying that it was the Americans who did this. And the Wall Street Journal, who of course is a mouthpiece for the Americans, is saying that no, actually it was the Israelis who did it. So, I mean, either or, one and the same. They're basically synonymous at this point. The front in the war is raging in Ukraine. As you can see, the entire front is being lit up big time, and the offensive hasn't even started yet. I have a feeling that once that major offensive started, this is going to be at the forefront of the news cycle once again, and it's going to be on the front page. Now, one thing that you should know is that the strategic oil reserve continues to be at a record low since 1983, I believe. So we're at 371 million barrels in storage, down from, I think, a peak of 665 million back in 2018. So people, harp on Biden for selling the oil, but you almost have to, you got to think, if he never would have done that, imagine what the price of gas and oil would be right now if they did not use some of that strategic oil reserve. So I'm not saying that was the best course of action, but you have to understand, and I guess you can't see it because I'm right in front of it there, but you have to understand, if we don't, and they're actually right now, they're considering passing a bill which is going to limit the Department of Energy's ability to withdraw crude oil. And they're saying that Biden is just going to veto this. So they're going to continue to draw down the strategic oil reserves. Now, ask yourself if, and recall that back in 1983, there was a lot less people and there was a lot less demand for oil. We use a lot more oil now. So this isn't even relative. Like when you control for population increases and consumption increases, energy increases, and all the rest, we really have significantly less than we did in 1983. And we're probably at the lowest level, period. Obviously at one point it was zero because there was no strategic oil reserve. But we're getting dangerously low as we approach a time where war could potentially flare up in the Middle East. And if the price of oil goes sky high during a recession, which is not supposed to happen, that's when you see crazy wild stagflation. And especially if people start ditching the petrodollar as a result of America losing the conflict. You need to understand that, and a lot of people haven't really thought this through yet, if Russia is able to successfully lock in Ukraine, even up to the Dnieper River, which is right here, okay, even if they can just take this, imagine the powerhouse they become, because they then have probably integrated about 15 million people into their population, many of them already Russian speaking. Okay, then you have Belarus, right? So you're starting to get this Soviet bloc, and then you have all these other little countries down here, Georgia, Azerbaijan, which eventually are going to be integrated. And then you have Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, who are on the chopping block next. So imagine we're talking about Soviet Union 2.0, but not under the communist flag, okay, under a neo-capitalist, whatever you want to call it, whatever Russia, whatever you can call that. Obviously, it's authoritarian to some extent, but authoritarian, democrat, I don't know what kind of thing you would call it, but many people are not understanding what this infusion of resource wealth is going to mean for the Russians as a geopolitical powerhouse. The fact that they already have all the weapons and the military to, to rival NATO is concerning as is. If they're able to take this territory and retain most of that, then all bets are off for, how influential they can be in the realm of global affairs. Now, I'm very suspicious about this whole Abram tank fiasco and how and why the United States, with an inventory of 8,000 of these tanks, cannot muster, or it's going to take so long to muster 31 tanks. Okay. What are all these tanks doing? As far as I know, there's not a lot of high intensity conflicts happening right now. Yes, there's conflicts, small scale conflicts happening in Yemen and a variety of other places. But if you're supposed to be the world's biggest superpower in terms of military, especially in terms of spending, then why is it that you cannot, at the drop of a hat, send over 31 tanks? I mean, that should be something they can do in 24 hours. Never mind having to wait. And I realize that people got to be trained, and I realize you got to build out the infrastructure to support it. But if they can't do that, then what can they do? What does that say about the actual capability of the US military to fight the Russians if all they can deliver is 31 tanks? And if the conservatives are saying, oh, we're limited, we're running out of supplies and all this stuff, what does that say about the military industrial complex? Is this just a bloated farce, like this trillions of dollars in spending every year? Where is it going that they can't deliver 31 tanks overnight? I mean, they should be able to do 1,000 tanks in a relatively short period of time. And I know people are going to be like, yeah, but you got to do logistics and this, that, whatever. Man, if they really wanted to, they could do it. So why aren't they doing it? Well, there's got to be some reason with respect to why they're not going all in just yet. Leave you guys to speculate as to why, but all we know is that the war is coming to the Baltics because Putin has basically said that the Latvian envoy needs to get out in a couple weeks, and there's provocations in Estonia, around the Gulf of Finland. That bears repeating. According to Marjorie Taylor Greene, the US dollar may lose global currency status because of what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. Who has been saying that for the longest time? Well, I have. And a lot of European policymakers are saying, you know what, the only way out of this is a war economy. Who's been saying that since last year? Well, I have. Yes, and according to Forbes, dollar reserve currency status is under threat, and this is in part due to what the Saudis are considering accepting alternative currencies for oil. And of course, in China, nothing to worry about, only 5,200 deaths and 503,000 cases. You could probably multiply this number at least, in the very least, by 1,000. That would be, 5 million deaths? Maybe not 1,000. It's hard to say, but there's some crazy, crazy stuff going on there. And we got some craziness going on in Auckland as well. Flooding all through New Zealand, and there's people walking around in the grocery store here. I seen them walking through the floodwaters, and I don't know how that's not an electrical hazard. I don't know how it's not a fire hazard. I don't know. I would strongly advise people not to do that if you're in a grocery store or any place for that matter, and electricity still is flowing through the outlets, and you're knee deep in water. That's probably not a good place to be. Okay, so anyways, lots of crazy stuff going on around the world with respect to climate chaos. All sorts of weather extremes are on the horizon. So that's only going to make matters more complicated. All the more reason to just stay focused and keep on prepping, because I don't think at this point we need any more validation that the shizzy's going to hit the fizzy. So you might as well just prepare for it, because all of the possible outcomes seem to be something bad coming down the road. There really is very few cases, unless ChatGPT masters public relations in time in order to broker some sort of peace deal between the Russians and NATO, then I don't know. I just don't know. Hopefully, I guess maybe AI will save us. That's the thing. AI will either destroy us, save us, then destroy us. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out. today unofficially declaring a new patriotic war against the German Leopard tanks that are going to be flooding into the Ukrainian battle zone soon. But we got wars breaking out on all fronts, and boy, are they cross-pollinating with one another. You see, all of these wars that are currently being or about to break out are all interconnected. The worse one gets, the worse the others get. So it's like a chain reaction. Now we got to talk about that. We got to talk about why the hell is Putin carrying around a nuclear briefcase? He always carries this around, but very seldom is it actually caught on camera. He only puts it on camera when he's trying to signal the West that, hey, you're getting a little bit too close. Okay, we got to talk about the speech that he gave today, which may well have been the unofficial declaration of war. We have the UK saying, hey, we're probably going to have to send in ground troops. What's the worst that could happen if we do that, right? Because there's 500,000 people protesting outside Buckingham Palace or whatever the hell you have there, and we need a distraction away from that. Yeah, because the cost of living is so high, but you wouldn't know that if you're watching the government-sponsored BBC, because they don't report on those types of things. You know, it's incredible. I've been watching the BBC or checking in with the BBC because I never watch it every few days to see what they're talking about. They're not talking about the 500,000 people in the streets protesting. What a surprise that a government-funded media agency wouldn't actually report what's really going on. We got Russia sending robots to the front. That's the actual robot. We're going to talk about that. We got wild weather going on all around the world. The Arctic sea ice is melting. We may well see a blue ocean event in just a couple of years. Oh, and the markets are back in FOMO mode. For what, you might ask? For what reason are the markets bouncing back? For no reason whatsoever. The Fed simply said, yeah, we're going to keep raising rates as you knew that we would. People are saying, oh, it's a coded message. This means that the Fed is going to start, bringing interest rates down again. Well, we'll see what happens. All you need to know is that we are still higher than we were on that fateful day of Black Tuesday, right before we went into terminal velocity for years afterwards and hit rock bottom when everybody was fleeced out of the market and was in the dirty 30s, soup lineups and all the rest, bread lineups. And then eventually they got us into a war and that got us out of it. So what do you think is going to happen? First, it's going to crash. Then they're going to say, we got to go to war. And as Gerald Celente says, when everything else fails, they take you to war. And you guys are in for a treat this weekend because I just talked with Gerald Celente yesterday for like 2 hours and it rubbed off on me because I just got to have this New York accent all the time when I'm talking now. I got to have the cojones to say what I feel. That was probably a really bad impression. Sorry, Gerald, but it's the truth. You guys are going to like that discussion. That one might get me in trouble. Okay, now this is important. We're going to go back to all that other stuff. We're going to break it down. Check this out, guys. I got this map tool here, and this thing is interactive. So I can add all my stories. I can go around the map. It's pretty cool. So we're going to come back to this. We're going to go into greater depth, but I got to show you this, okay? This is important. Why is this important? Because this is the future. I've been talking about the threat of artificial intelligence for years. I've made several videos on it. I talked about ChatGPT a few weeks ago, and this is derived from the ChatGPT platform. This is Synesthesia, and this is an AI video generator. This is not an actual person, to the best of my knowledge. This is like some Unreal Engine 5 type stuff. You need to understand that this is what you are going to be seeing in the next year. You're going to be seeing deepfakes that are so realistic that there's going to have to be massive new regulation brought in, and that's probably what they want in order to regulate who is able to make content. And there's going to be a whole industry just around detecting deepfakes that is going to arise. But check this out. All I did was I typed a sentence into this thing, and this is what she said.
World War III is underway, and the whole system is teetering on the brink of collapse. Let Canadian Prepper help you get prepared Be sure to check out his World War III nuclear survival bag video.
What a great suggestion. I'm glad she brought that up. Yeah, guys, that's our future, so get ready for it. So this is our nuclear war, World War III survival bug out bag video, probably soon to be obsolete with technology like what we just seen there. But I would encourage you guys to go and check this out because this is a real banger. We're trying to kickstart it with the algorithm. After you're done watching this video, if you haven't seen this one yet, go and check it out. It's very important that you watch videos like this as opposed to me ranting and raving about stuff we already know by now. We already know a major war is coming. We already know that it's either World War III, nuclear bombs go off, or in the very least, economic collapse. So how many times, how many days do I have to keep coming back and talking about what's inevitable? Please go and check out that more evergreen perennial content. This is why a lot of people are not going to survive, because you're not willing to watch those videos. You know those prepper channels? All the videos that have a very low view count, those are the videos people should actually be watching. Okay, the ones that have the highest view count are the ones that at the end of the day, they're not really providing you with a significant amount of actionable information. That's why you got to check out our blue strip content. We try to throw in the odd tip into these videos, but we can't always do that. But you guys got to educate yourself about stuff. Like, look at that. Look at that. It's amazing high quality production. The communist cameraman actually worked for a day on that video, the hardest he ever worked in his life. Now, let's get to the map. Where should we start? Let's start with gold demand surging to an 11-year high in 2022. We're going to get to the war stuff. I know there's a lot of World War III people who just want to hear the World War III stuff, but you got to understand the big picture. That's what I'm here to do. You can go to those other channels where they go into more depth about every little individual story. I'm here to try to knit it all together, all right? We got gold surging to an 11-year high. What happened 11 years ago, approximately, more or less? Well, one of the worst, recessions, the Great Recession, as they called it. Look here, dot-com bubble, bam, terminal velocity all the way down to the Great Recession, the housing bubble, all that craziness. This is when the price of gold rallied. Remember that? Like, it rallied to the moon. I think before this, it was like maybe $1,000 or not even $1,000. And this is the first time it really started to go into clear $1,500 an ounce. And that's what happened. Right now, you wouldn't know that because today in the markets, because the Fed sneezed in the right direction, everybody got all excited for some reason, even though layoffs continue. There's lots of earning misses with the exception of Meta, where everybody had low expectations anyways. So people are getting way too excited, but there is nothing really there of substance. And it's the most obvious indicator. Sometimes you just got to keep it simple, stupid. People will look at all these kind of technicals and all the rest. All of that is just astrology. The only thing we need to know when it comes to equities, anyways, is that, excuse me, we are at a higher point of market valuation than we were on that fateful day on Black Tuesday that, of course, preceded one of the worst Great Depressions in human history, modern industrial human history. Okay, so we are likely to see something like that once again. After the collapse of the whole Bretton Woods and the petrodollar came to be, and the Fed started printing money and everybody started dollar-denominated assets, that's when this thing started to go up, and they're trying to keep it afloat. There's some people who believe that we're never going to go back down here again, that equities are going to continue to be inflated, but everything regresses to the mean. So if you ask me if I'm Warren Buffett right now, I'm still sitting on the sidelines, because I know that there's a long way to go down. And all these people who are, vacating their commodity stocks and going into the NASDAQ and the SPACs and the Bitcoin and all the rest once again, I'm telling you, man, it sounds like a bull trap, but hey, it's not financial advice. Let's just see what happens when the wars start to break out. LAX power failure, who knows what that was? So I think the feds have deferred to the municipal police. There was a LAX power failure for about an hour. because of all the grid attacks that have been happening in the United States. Homeland Security investigated, they deferred to local law enforcement. So maybe it wasn't that big of a deal, but maybe it was. That's still pretty significant. All right, let's head over here. We have former UK defense minister says that NATO may need to send ground forces to Ukraine. Actually, let's save that because there's one more thing we got to talk about first. This right here is a pandemic that everybody should be concerned about. But for some reason, hypocritically, the media says we don't have to worry about this whatsoever. Get a load of this. Bird flu is becoming zoonotic, meaning that it can now infect other species. It's finding ways to mutate and become infectious and have transmission between species. So get a load of this. You have domestic birds, okay? Different species of domestic birds, 5,600 to be exact. Let me zoom in on that for you guys. Man, I love this map tool. It is so convenient, isn't it? So we got 5,600 species of domestic birds, 4,200 species of wild birds, and 120 mammals. Now, why are mammals catching this? Well, they explain it rather simply in that a dead or sick wild bird that gets caught by a coyote or a wolf or something like that, that's, foraging for food, contains a lot of virus. And because of that, of course, the animal that eats it contracts the virus. Now, the more and more this happens, the bird flu numbers in the wild world and in the domestic world are off the charts in the last couple of years, and it's only going to continue to explode. The more this happens, eventually there's a mutation to another species. A virus is going to change, and it's going to start to transmit from a different mammal to a different mammal. That's going to drastically increase the risk posed to humans that someday it could potentially affect us. In a recent report, the UK Health Security Agency warned that rapid and consistent acquisition of the mutation in mammals may imply this virus has a propensity to cause zoonotic infections, meaning it could jump to humans. Now, what's perplexing to me is that we are told that this virus that has been circulated came from nature. The last one that's been bugging us for the last 3 years, it came from nature. That's still the mainstream view of things, in spite of evidence to the contrary. But we're told that it came from nature. So if it came from nature before I don't even think it was really too much on the radar before that, why aren't we making a big deal about this? Should not we be concerned that something is going to emerge from this situation that is going to be potentially dangerous for humans? You would think so, but I'm sure they're going to do some gain of function research in a lab to ensure that it gets out and infects humans, because that's how we roll. As I said before, we have hundreds of thousands of UK workers who are striking in response to a new labor law. The UK is definitely in a recession. Inflation is through the roof. And when all those things are happening, well, it's a great time to just send people to war. Let's see what UK minister, is he an MP? I think he's an MP, has to say about whether or not we should get into World War III.
Just checking with you there, Sir Giles. Are you suggesting boots on the ground?
I think that is something that we now have to consider, Kay. Yes, I do. I feel that certainly if you were to put a NATO force in there, that would be NATO versus Russia. But Russia is the guilty party here. Russia has invaded another sovereign state. And we have...
So, yeah, boots on the ground is coming. Depending on who you listen to, guys, it really depends on who you listen to about this conflict. Word on the street is that, I'm not even sure if I'm going to go into great detail about this, but word on the street is that Biden and Blinken and their handlers suggested to Putin a peace deal. They actually proposed that they would give Putin 20% of the country. This is according to the CIA director, William Burns now. They claim that they were willing to let Russia keep this 20% of the territory that they actually control in return for something else. I can't remember all the details of it, but this apparently was a real thing. And not only did the Russians reject it, but also the Ukrainians rejected this. Okay. But even if the Russians, or even if the Ukrainians didn't reject it, the Russians will never, ever trust the United States anymore. Any sort of proposition is, even if they do pretend to trust it, the United States and NATO are not going to be able to trust that the Russians actually are going to honor their side of the deal. So there is no trust here because of those revelations of Angela Merkel when she basically admitted that the Minsk agreements were just a stalling tactic to buy them time to fortify their military. Now, if you're wondering why there's this cutout here, this is from Live UA map that I've just superimposed over this map, and I've aligned it all. Pretty cool, hey? And yeah, so the Ukrainians are saying that there is going to be a major offensive by the Russians taking place by February 24th. Now, a lot of these predictions by the Ukrainian government are premature, but there is a lot of evidence to suggest that there is a big major offensive coming on all fronts, and that is why they proposed that peace deal in the first place, or at least wanted to get the Russians to the negotiating table. There are concerns that they're going to come through Belarus, cut off the supply line from Poland into Western Ukraine. So they're going to just totally flank them here, cut them off, go right down to Transnistria, and just fill the gap backwards and encircle Kiev and force Zelensky to sign over whatever they want him to sign over. I guess what's going on right now, though, and what people need to pay attention to is a few things. So this is the military equipment that's been sent to Ukraine thus far. So we had helicopters, drones, artillery, armored vehicles, ammunition, blah, 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 anti-aircraft weapons. The big concern right now is that the United States is about to send longer ranged missiles. And these are going to hit the battlefield a lot sooner than the tanks will. These are about double the range of the HIMARS, which have proven to be quite effective. And this means that Ukrainians can hit Russian targets from a further distance. This is going to make things challenging for the Russians. And you can bet this is going to be an escalation. Now, this is not the ATACMS that can also shoot from the HIMARS, which are, I believe, a 300-mile range, which, of course, could potentially drastically change the course of the battlefield. The real question is, those could potentially be more effective than sending tanks. I guess tanks are a symbolic gesture, and I suppose you do need tanks if you're going to establish a territory after you finish blowing everything up. You need armor to send the guys in there, but really it's the long-range missiles that are going to do the most damage. Now, they suspect that this is why, this is Moscow up here, this is why Moscow is installing all of these air defenses. Now, they already have a very sophisticated air defense system around Moscow. They also have some of the deepest, biggest bunkers in the world for the majority of their population, all fully decked out and ready to go for nuclear Armageddon. There are suspicions that Moscow is preparing because it knows that it's going to be doing this major offensive, and it suspects that Ukraine is going to get technology for long-range missiles that can potentially target Moscow, or for drones. Okay, so both sides appear to be preparing for a major offensive. The fact that Russia is taking away air defense assets from this battlefield, okay, they already have a lot of their assets deployed all around the country. Many months ago, I showed you guys a map of where all the Russian military equipment, it's all spread out, it's everywhere in the country. Okay, this concentration, this is but a fraction of what the Russians are actually, have. So I don't have the map today, but even the Finland border, they're very concerned about that. There's been threats issued to Finland that if Finland becomes a NATO state, then they have this huge border to contend with, not counting, of course, the Baltic states, but the Finnish border is way bigger. And then, of course, you have St. Petersburg, which is right there. So the Russians are spread really thin. So why on earth are they installing more air defense systems in Moscow? What do they know, or what do they suspect is coming. Now, as far as I know, these air defense systems that they're installing are not anti ICBM. I think they're more like guns, but don't quote me on that. I'm getting out of my lane here a little bit, but I don't think they're not like the S-500 or anything like that. Things that are going to be able to intercept an actual intercontinental ballistic missile or some of the nukes that are launched from Europe here, from NATO, if it all goes in that direction. But something strange is occurring there. So that's something to keep in mind. We have the expulsion of more diplomats from Austria. So we had the expulsion of diplomats from all the Baltic states recently. There's been ultimatums that they need to be out of both Russia and Latvia and Estonia, I believe, by around February 22nd, which is why perhaps everybody's concerned that that's when the big offensive is going to take place. The Ukrainians are saying it's the anniversary, and this is why they're going to do it as some sort of, because it's symbolic. I don't think Russia plays that game. I think we've found that they're going to do what makes practical sense, and they're not going to do things just because it's on a certain date or anything like that, to be ceremonious about it. Now, we got to talk about the connection of all these wars, because there's a huge connection between the Ukraine war, the Syrian war, and the coming Iranian and Israeli and American war. The biggest military exercise ever conducted with the Americans in Israel is currently underway. Okay, we're talking about 140 bombers, planes, helicopters. I think it's 8,000 American troops on the ground, and I don't know how many Israeli troops are participating in the exercise. But understand that every single exercise right now is interpreted as an offensive against an adversary. So all of these exercises that are occurring around the world have the potential to actually cause and trigger real conflicts, like this one in North Korea that we're going to talk about right away. But the reason why this entanglement here is so significant, because there's some real interesting overlap and cross-pollination between these two conflicts. And we're starting to see the line being drawn. We're starting to see the severing of ties between Israel and Russia, and both sides becoming firmly divided and entrenched on either side. And why is this happening? Well, the drone strike that attacked the Iranian arms facilities, apparently, and everything is unofficial, it's a lot of speculation at this point, but there's some good intelligence sources that suggest that those facilities were working on the Shahed drones that the Iranians were sending to the Russians. Now, why would Israel attack those weapons manufacturing facilities that were sending stuff, to fight against the Ukrainians, unless they were firmly aligned with the Ukrainians? Now, you would think, well, this is obvious, right? Because, Israel is one of the biggest benefactors of U.S. military aid, something to the effect of billions of dollars a year. They basically fund the Iron Dome. They fund all those programs, all the nukes, all the stuff like that. And then, of course, you have the relationship between the Ukrainians and the Americans, So both of these are like the 51st and 52nd state, respectively. Now, so it should be a no-brainer that they would both be on the same page. But the ties between Israel and Russia are complicated because of the Syrian quagmire. I think we can call it a quagmire at this point. But it's starting to become very clear that the Iranians and the Russians their alliance is getting a lot stronger. And the Russians are planning on sending a lot of warplanes to the Iranians, Su-35s, and they have in the past offered to give them missile defense systems. People are saying, intelligent people more intelligent than I, that by summer, Israel and America are going to attack Iran. And Iran has said today that any military action against Iran will be a declaration of war. Now, we've already had an attack against Iran. Of course, there's not definitive 100% demonstrative proof that that actually was the Israelis. And the Israelis are maintaining this posture of strategic ambiguity where Benjamin Netanyahu comes out today and he says, well, we may have done it or we may not have done it. You know, we're not going to confirm or deny, right? So because of that, the Iranians can't really, I guess they could declare war if they wanted to. But like I've said in the past, this would be, I can't say the S word, but it would be when you take your own life, okay? Because it would beget hundreds of nuclear weapons. It would be a nuclear onslaught. Now, I'm not saying that that's immediately what Israel would do, because of course that in itself would draw a lot of condemnation from the international community, regardless of how they tried to spin it with propaganda. Nuking any city of people would just be bad no matter who did it, even if it was a vilified peoples like the ancient Persians, the Iranians. Okay, so I don't think that that is going to be the outcome, but we very well could see a conventional war breakout. And it really all depends how much Russia is willing to commit to coming to the aid of the Iranians. It could very well be that they're extending that nuclear umbrella covertly to the Iranians, and that is really why Israel is doing this touch and go, and they're not doing an all-out offensive. Because with the American military power, you would think that the Israelis could go in there and get the job done relatively quickly. The fact that they can't is maybe saying something. And Iran has a very good military. I mean, I don't know, I'm not like a military person, but you know, they're no pushover. It's not going to be like in Iraq. And it would be a very, very long conflict. And just look at all of these wars that the United States is committing itself to at once. I mean, this is a massive war, which in itself would send the price of oil skyrocketing. Salente, I don't know if he made a blunder when I was talking to him yesterday. He said $130 a barrel for oil if a war breaks out in Iran. Are you kidding me? $130 per barrel? Never mind. You're talking like $300 per barrel. Easy, minimum. If a hot war, like a high intensity conflict breaks out there, it's over. The war in Taiwan, of course, which they say is going to happen by 2025. The U.S. has to commit itself to that fight. These guys are all of the U.S. military bases, okay? Now, ask yourself, if this was the United States and China had all these bases just off the coast in little island-like countries, do you think we would be concerned? We got military bases in Thailand. We're building 4 more in the Philippines. I say we because Canada is tethered to the United States. I have to always add that disclaimer because somebody will say, what do you mean we? You're the Canadian prepper. Yeah, the North American prepper, more or less. And of course, CanadianPreparedness.com does ship free to all of North America. Taiwan is another one. It's not a military base, but of course, we provide them with a lot of military aid. And we got Guam, we got Australia. Can't forget Australia, who's an ally. Then, of course, we have Japan. Then we have South Korea, where I think the largest troop deployment in the world for American troops is with 29,000 troops. And right now they're doing joint naval exercises, I believe, nuclear exercises. And the North Koreans aren't too happy about that, which is why they're saying that they're able to handle any U.S. military threat with the use of nuclear weapons, effectively threatening to do a tit-for-tat nuclear exchange if South Korea and the Americans try anything. I don't see why we would ever want to initiate anything on this front. But remember that North Korea is the pit bull of the Chinese, and that's not an offense to the North Korean people. It's just that's their back door. That's their guard dog. Okay, you can see here clearly that's the gateway into China. Okay, and North Korea holds everybody at bay, and I think that's why Xi Jinping helps keeping Kim Jong-un propped up with military aid and stuff like that. There's no way the North Koreans were able to build that, what was it, like a 13-axle video that they wheeled out the world's largest nuclear weapon on? Come on. That was a statement by China. We got to bring David Pine on again because I'm sure he can break down just how close the relationship between these two countries actually is. Anyways, with all these naval exercises going on right now, the risk of North Korea misinterpreting what the South and the Americans are doing increases. And that is the case with all of these conflicts. And remember, they're all cross-pollinating. Okay, you have BRICS, you have the relationship between China and Russia. You have North Korea sending artillery shells to the Russians to use, of course, under the radar. There's satellite images of trains coming to Russia. You have the Israelis sending hundreds of thousands of artillery rounds, of course, at the behest of the Americans, and they are sending that to the Ukrainians. They are also considering sending the Iron Dome system, and the Russians say that that would be a red line with Israel. They are warning them that they should not do that. Otherwise, of course, that means the Russians could potentially send something more to the Iranians to protect them. Maybe they'll send them S-400s. Who knows? But that could make the Israeli offensive that's in the works, that could definitely put a damper on those plans. So you see, guys, how these things are all connected. It's all connected. And then it's all connected beyond that to the global petrodollar, or as they're calling it, the euro dollar. Okay, it's not just about the petrodollar. I believe petrodollars make up about $3.5 trillion in dollars. And then what they call the euro dollar is around $20 trillion that are out there, that if were ever returned, if they were ever cashed in, we would see rapid hyperinflation. So it's imperative that the United States can keep these places on lockdown. I know there's a lot of anti-war people that don't want to hear that. Sometimes we need to ask ourselves, what's the lesser of two evils? Okay, and I'm not really giving an opinion on the matter. I'm just saying you have to ask yourself at some point, is it better that the United States rules the world or China or Russia? Because if there's a power vacuum, it's got to be filled. And there's, some war realism that has to take place. I'm not saying that this is a good idea. I think if I was China, I'd be 100% pissed that I was surrounded by U.S. military bases and nuclear weapons to boot. So, I mean, come on. You got to understand it from their perspective. But it's just war realism. You got to be realistic about what is actually taking shape in the world. And if the U.S. gets pushed out in one place, the likelihood that they get pushed out in other places increases, and then the dominoes just start to fall. Okay, this is why you need that full spectrum dominance, because if you don't, if there's one little chink in the armor and the enemy can exploit that, then the whole thing can unravel relatively fast. Let's see what Putin had to say today. He said, it's on the 80th anniversary, I believe it was the Battle of Stalingrad or something like that, when the Russians were victorious over the Germans. He says, we are once again forced to fend off the aggression of the collective West. Nazi ideology reemerges while Russia withstands Western aggression. Once again, he is threatened by German tanks. This is exactly what I said anyways. Leopards with crosses are sent to fight Russia in the Ukrainian land by the last descendants of Hitler and the Banderites. Stefan Bandera, look him up. Those who drag Germany into a new war and expect to win on the battlefield do not understand that a modern war with Russia will be different. We're not sending our tanks to their borders, but we have something to answer for, and it's not going to end with the use of armored vehicles. Everyone needs to understand that, i.e., they will use nuclear weapons. Now, I think the reason why the Russians aren't too concerned about tanks and why this maybe was an overhyped red line, even though it's not really, because tanks are definitely required for an offensive. They're required to hold territory, I presume. But the real kicker is going to be the long-range missiles when Biden decides to send those. And remember that Russia has declined the offer by Blinken and Biden, apparently, and the CIA director, William Burns, to take 20% of the country because they don't trust us anymore. So they're just saying, to hell with it. We don't trust you guys anymore, so why the hell would we ever sign an agreement? And maybe we will sign the agreement, make you think that we're actually going to honor it, just like you did with the Minsk agreements, and then we're going to attack anyway. So guys, nobody trusts anybody right now. This is why this situation is inevitable. It's going to escalate, and it has to almost escalate to the point, I think, where there is some demonstrative nuclear detonation. Because depending on the effectiveness of the long range missiles that start to get deployed, if that is enough to stave off this Russian offensive that everybody thinks is coming in the next few weeks, and that in itself, that could just be another feint maneuver by the Russians. Who knows? I guess we're going to find out. But if that is unsuccessful at achieving their objectives, then that's when I think we start talking about a real clear pathway towards nuclear escalation. Right now, it appears the Ukrainians are on the back foot. Depending on which news agency you consult, you go to express.uk, oh, the Russians are suffering. There's poverty. They're losing. They're defecting in droves. You know, there's illness in the trenches, and everybody's unhappy, and there's prisoners that they're forcing on the front lines, and all these nasty things are happening, and the whole system is falling apart in Russia. But then you go to another news agency and alternative media, and everybody's having a good time in Russia. So you have to take everything you see at this point in time with a heaping teaspoon of salt. Okay. Just trying to look through my notes here to see if there's anything else. You know, people think that I just get up here and start talking about stuff. No. This takes a long time. So even though I say that those videos where we put a lot into the production, a lot of that is post-production, but a lot of this kind of stuff is pre-production, because I research this stuff. Probably for each one of these videos, guys, it's like 8 hours of research that goes into it. And sometimes I don't even make a video. It's like I don't have anything unique to bring to the conversation. I just will not say it. Some people want me to be more specific with my titling of the videos, but every day it's a comprehensive analysis. Okay, I'm not in a position where I'm willing to do deep dives into all of these issues, because I'm more of a big picture type person. How should we conclude this video? How about, what do we got going on here? Here's this robot that is making the rounds. Whoa, that's loud. This is robot tanks. 4 combat robots named the Markers are arriving on the front in Ukraine. Now, I don't know, is this remote control? Is it autonomous? It looks like it's got some sensors on there. This might just be cameras. This could just be totally remote controlled. Possibly. They only have 4. I don't know why they're doing this. Is it to boost morale? Is it, you know, what's the point? They're saying that these are what they're going to use to kill Leopard tanks. Anyways, that's kind of nifty. As for the climate stuff, we got, as you can see, the jet stream is broken here, coming all the way down. All this nasty cold air in Texas. They got a few power outages going on. So it's slightly below normal here. Actually, not slightly. It's significantly below normal, which hasn't been the case for the majority of the year. As you can see here, Europe still not getting any winter. I think winter is going to have missed them. If there was any year that, this was the best time to happen, it was this year, of course, when they've been cut off from Russian natural gas. You can see China is on fire. The droughts there are raging. The Colorado River, of course, is still drying up in spite of some deluge in the Californian front. It is still not looking very good. We have the Arctic sea ice extent nearing record lows, but the extent is not the only thing. Look up Blue Ocean event if you want to know how weird things can get. Never mind the war and the economy stuff. This is going to be a doozy, guys. Okay, so this is Arctic sea ice, and the whiter is the thicker ice. Okay, so that's the Arctic sea ice that has an age of at least 5 years. Back in the day, because it used to be an ice age, right? Now, apparently we're supposed to be, I can't remember, I think we're supposed to be going into an ice age right now. Or yes, we're supposed to be going into an ice age because we're on the upswing of the Milankovitch cycle, but the ice is actually melting for reasons that we're not going to get into, so I don't upset the comment section in this video, okay? Now, the white is the thick, old ice. they measure the amount of white on the planet reflects the light, cooling the planet. So they only really talk about extent. When they say blue ocean event, they're talking about the extent, but they're not talking about the thickness. But the thickness is important. And I'm going to show you why with this animation. Okay. So here's the animation. So you can see. Look what happens. Okay. So here we are in 2022. Okay. It's outlined, so it's kind of deceiving in a way. But you can see there's very, very little thick ice left. And it's all this thin 1 to 2 year ice. So even though there's a similar extent, all of that old ice, let's go back to 1984. I mean, look at the difference. I mean, it's staggering. One of these years, it's just all going to melt. And when it all melts, the idea is that this is not going to be able to reflect the light. It doesn't look like much, but it actually plays a very, very big role in keeping our climate at the equilibrium we've been accustomed to living in for the last 70,000 years. I know some of you think we've only been here for what, 6,000? That's your thing, all right? But as you can see, it's almost like there's some years where it's almost been gone. So let's just kind of do so we see 1984, the 80s, it's going 90s, it starts to go in every little bit. Because what happens, the old ice, it comes around Greenland and then it floats out to sea. Every year, a few chunks of it flow out to Greenland. They don't actually show that here, but it's scary when you know what the implications are. 2009, almost none. There's a few, patches up here. There's still a few like 3-year thickness ice here. And then it just keeps on receding, keeps on going away. Now it's almost all at the periphery. And so it's only a matter of time before it's gone. And when it's gone, that's when you see the rapid heating of the oceans, and things get interesting, to say the least. But we got a lot of interesting things on the horizon. We've got a lot of potentials for collapse, be it contagion, the bird flu, the economy, of course, which is man-made. So I'm less concerned about the economy. I'm concerned about it. It's going to be a crime-laden hellscape, but, there's certain things that we just can't control. And you might say, well, we can control nuclear war. But like I said, when there's no trust, it is very, very difficult to do so. Maybe there's going to be somebody who comes around and is able to broker some sort of agreement. Go and check out our nuclear World War III survival bug out bag, gear bag in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Canadian Prepper out.